There are souls that grow loud in chaos, and there are souls that grow strong in silence. The world never sees the second kind. They are the ones who disappear quietly, who walk alone when noise becomes unbearable, who leave the crowd not because they hate it, but because they can no longer find themselves in it. Carl Jung once said that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But most people never follow that path inward, because the moment you do, you meet someone you've been running from your entire life. Your shadow. It is not evil, it is not broken, it is everything you rejected to survive, the anger you swallowed when you were told to be kind, the grief you buried when you were told to be strong, the truth you denied when you were told to smile. All of it waits for you in the dark. The strongest souls are not born in comfort, they are born in confrontation. In the silent hours when the world is asleep and the mind begins to whisper what the heart has tried to forget. You will know you are entering that silence when the outer world begins to lose its meaning, when your old ambitions, your need for recognition, your hunger for approval suddenly feel hollow, as if you've been climbing a mountain that leads nowhere. That's when the silence begins to speak, not as emptiness, but as truth. It's the moment when you realize that your suffering was never punishment. It was initiation. Every betrayal, every failure, every loss was not the world breaking you down, but the soul preparing you to see what can only be seen in darkness. Because it is in darkness that the eyes adjust. It is in stillness that the heart learns to hear. The silence you fear is not absence. It is presence, stripped of all distraction. It is where your real strength begins to grow. You won't find it in the validation of others. You won't find it in success or noise or applause. You will find it the moment you stop running and dare to stand alone in the quiet space where your shadow finally steps forward and asks, "Are you ready to remember who you are?" Most people say they want peace, but what they truly want is the illusion of peace, the soft numbness of distraction, the kind that keeps them from hearing the echoes inside. We fill our days with motion, work, screens, opinions, noise, so that silence never has the chance to corner us. We call it being productive, but often it is just our fear of being still. Carl Jung wrote that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And he was right, because facing yourself means losing the image you've built for others. It means dismantling the mask you've worn for safety. We have learned to repress what we don't want to see. We smile when we want to scream. We say, "It's fine," while something inside us quietly dies. We post happiness online, hoping that maybe, if others believe it, we might believe it too. But repression has a price. Every emotion you bury becomes a ghost that lingers behind your smile. Every truth you deny becomes a shadow that waits in the mirror. And the more you pretend to be light, the heavier your darkness becomes. There's a strange fatigue that comes from living half alive. A soul tired not from doing too much, but from feeling too little. You begin to sense that you are acting a role, that your laughter is rehearsed, your confidence borrowed, your dreams chosen for you. You begin to sense the split between who you show the world and who you know yourself to be. And this is where the struggle begins. The shadow stirs beneath every smile. It whispers through envy, anger, jealousy, guilt, the emotions we label negative, but which are actually messages from the depths. They are not here to destroy you. They are trying to speak, to say, "Look at me, I exist too." But we silence them with false positivity. We recite affirmations, we chase success, we preach good vibes only, as if we can cleanse the soul by ignoring its wounds. Yet the more you chase light, the more violently the dark resists, because the soul cannot be tricked. It knows what you hide, and sooner or later, the mask begins to crack. You start to see flashes, a burst of anger you can't control, a wave of sadness that feels ancient, a sudden emptiness that no victory can fill. These are not breakdowns, they are breakthroughs in disguise. It is the unconscious rising, the parts of you you've abandoned, demanding to come home. But it feels like madness at first, because the truth always sounds insane to a mind that has lived in denial. So you will fight it. You will try to go back to who you were, to the person who smiled easily, who didn't question, who didn't feel so much, but something inside will whisper. That person was never whole, and once you hear that whisper, there is no one hearing it. You cannot return to sleep once the soul has begun to wake. Your pain, once hidden, becomes a doorway, and through it, a new kind of strength begins to take form. Not in perfection, but in honesty, because only when you stop pretending to be pure light do you finally realize that light means nothing without the dark that defines it, and that is where the revelation begins. There comes a night when you stop fighting the dark, you sit in it, and for the first time you don't try to fix it. You don't reach for your phone, you don't reach for comfort, you simply listen. At first it feels unbearable, but slowly something happens. The silence stops feeling empty. It begins to pulse, with memory, emotion, meaning, and from that stillness a voice emerges. Not loud, but unmistakably you. The you that existed before the masks, before the noise, before the world told you who you were supposed to be. This is what Carl Jung called the encounter with the shadow. It is not a war, it is a meeting. The moment when the conscious self and the unconscious self finally face each other. The ego, the part that wants control, image, and order, must now meet the part that has been exiled, the fears, desires, instincts, and grief you thought you had buried. Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And that is the revelation. Wholeness is not found by rejecting your darkness, but by understanding it. You are not meant to destroy the shadow. You are meant to integrate it, to look at what you have feared and say, you belong here too. Every emotion you've ever suppressed has a story. Anger once protected your boundaries. Envy once revealed what your heart secretly longed for. Sadness once honored what you loved and lost. Even guilt, that painful reminder, once guided you toward integrity. But in trying to be good, you exiled these teachers. And in doing so, you became fragmented. The work of the soul is to bring them home. Integration is not about becoming flawless. It's about becoming real. You begin to notice the subtle power of truth, how simply admitting what you feel releases you, how allowing the shadow to speak softens its grip. You realize that darkness was never the enemy. Your resistance to it was. There is a paradox at the center of every human being. We seek light, yet we are born from shadow. To deny one is to live half a life, but to embrace both, that is to become whole. It's like standing at dawn, behind you, the night, before you, the light, and in that in-between, that sacred meeting point, you understand, both belong to you. You cannot heal what you do not allow yourself to feel. You cannot feel what you constantly avoid, and you cannot avoid what was meant to make you human. When you stop judging your inner world, the war within you ends, and from that peace, a new strength is born. Not the strength of domination or control, but of understanding. To know your darkness is to gain compassion, for yourself and for others. Because once you've seen your own capacity for anger, weakness, jealousy, and fear, you stop pretending to be better than anyone. You realize we are all fragments, trying to remember the whole. The people who seem lost in shadow are not less evolved. They are mirrors, showing you what remains unseen in yourself. And when you stop judging them, you stop judging you. That is the moment the ego surrenders, not in defeat, but in humility. It finally accepts, I am not pure light nor pure dark. I am both, and I am beautiful in my contradiction. That acceptance is liberation, because now nothing inside you needs to hide. You no longer waste energy pretending. The split is healed. The light and shadow begin to dance, and from their union, a soul is born. This is the silent birth of the strongest souls, the ones who have walked through their own darkness and come back carrying the light, not as a weapon, but as understanding. They do not shine to be seen, they shine to see clearly. Once you have seen your shadow, life can never return to what it was. The illusions you once lived by, perfection, control, approval, no longer fit. They fall away like old skin, and you begin to see everything differently. The world doesn't change, you do. You start to see the motives beneath actions, the fear behind arrogance, the pain behind cruelty. You no longer take things so personally, because you recognize the shadow in others as the same one you faced within yourself. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the path toward becoming whole, toward uniting the conscious and the unconscious into one integrated being. It is not a path of comfort, it is a path of truth. And truth when lived, transforms everything. In relationships, you stop seeking validation and start seeking connection. You no longer need others to mirror your worth. You carry it quietly inside you. You begin to speak honestly, even when your voice shakes. You apologize without shame, forgive without superiority, because you've learned that vulnerability is not weakness. It's what makes love possible. In solitude, you find peace instead of loneliness, because you have met yourself and found company there. You begin to enjoy your own presence like a quiet friend. You realize that silence is not empty. It's full of truth waiting to be heard. In leadership, you move differently. You no longer lead from ego or image, but from presence. People feel safe around you, not because you are perfect, but because you are real. They can sense that you have walked through your own fire and emerged without the need to dominate or prove. The integrated person does not seek power over others. They carry power within. The transformation is subtle yet immense. You stop fighting your emotions. Anger becomes clarity. Sadness becomes depth. Fear becomes humility. Each feeling transforms from enemy into ally, a compass pointing toward understanding. You start noticing the divine rhythm in chaos. How loss reveals love. How endings carve space for beginnings. How darkness teaches gratitude for light. This is not positivity, it is perspective. The mature soul does not reject pain, it weaves pain into meaning. And from that meaning comes peace. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Look well into yourself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if you will always look. That source is not found by escaping suffering, but by entering it with awareness. To look at your shadow and say, I will not abandon you anymore. That is what creates resilience. Not the denial of pain, but the integration of it. And so, transformation is not a moment. It is a continual becoming, a quiet, daily practice of awareness, seeing your patterns, naming your projections, and choosing presence instead of reaction. It's how you hold yourself when you fail, how you speak to yourself when you're hurting, how you forgive others without forgetting your boundaries. You begin to move through life less like a warrior at war with himself, and more like a monk walking through a storm, not untouched but unbroken. You don't seek silence as escape anymore. You seek it as communion, because in silence you no longer feel alone. You feel whole, and that wholeness is what the world hungers for. Not more noise, not more certainty, but people who have walked through their darkness and emerged gentle. These are the strongest souls, the ones who have faced the truth and lived to tell it softly. There comes a morning after the long night. No fanfare, no applause, just a quiet, steady light spilling across the floor. You wake, not as someone new, but as someone whole. The silence that once frightened you now feels sacred. It hums gently beneath your thoughts, reminding you that peace was never something to find. It was something to return to. The world is still chaotic, still imperfect, still loud, but you no longer need to match its rhythm. You move slower now, you listen more, you feel more. And in that stillness, you begin to notice the miracle of ordinary things, a stranger's smile, the sound of rain, the warmth of sunlight through a window. Life is no longer something to conquer, it is something to participate in. This is the gift of the shadow. It brings you back to your humanity. It strips away the masks, the endless striving, the false light, until only truth remains. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And you finally understand what that means. It's not about perfection, achievement, or enlightenment. It's about presence, about standing where you are, with your darkness and your light, and saying, "This is me, all of me." You are no longer at war with yourself. You don't need to win anymore. You just need to be. And in that being, there is immense power. Because a person who has made peace with their shadow cannot be manipulated by fear. They do not need to control others, because they have learned to master themselves. You see now, the strongest souls are not forged in noise, nor in constant motion. They are born in silence, in the hidden chambers of the heart, where the human spirit learns to listen to itself again. Every scar becomes scripture. Every wound becomes wisdom. Every silence becomes song. And so, when you walk back into the world, you carry something different in your eyes. A stillness, a knowing, a quiet flame. You don't need to speak it. The world will feel it. because the soul that has walked through darkness and returned with light does not need to shout to be heard. It is the echo.